Phi Nguyen and I'm your host on Inside Vietnam.
This is a fantastic market because of the strength of the population.
A very high level of attractiveness. It makes sense for them to look at Vietnam.
Stabilised, there is an opportunity in Vietnam because it is an emerging market.
You know, there's still a huge amount of foreign investment coming in here, still a huge amount of interest in Vietnam.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. My name is Phi Nguyen and I'm your host on Inside Vietnam. I remember reading an article on Business Week in 2008 titled "Vietnam is hot, don't get burned," with a review on the glooming outlook of the fund management sector in Vietnam after a booming year in 2007. With the slow recovery of the global economy since 2010, is the sector painting a new picture for Vietnam to attract fresh offshore investment? In order to provide you with an overview of the sector historical development, past performances and future outlooks, let us welcome our guest speaker today, Mr. Hank Rutenberg, Acting CEO of Prudential Funds in Vietnam. Thank you very much, Hank, for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for this opportunity, Phing.
Let's start by talking a little bit about the young industry fund sector in Vietnam. How can you basically give us an overview of the historical development of the sector to date?
Okay, yes, I can. It's indeed what you say, it's a young industry. The industry of funds domiciled in Vietnam is only 5 years old. It started all in 2007. Before that time there were funds, offshore funds investing in Vietnam, but it only started in 2007 with new decisions from the government to open up mutual funds, basically. And there it started with. Basically, there are two types of funds in Vietnam domiciled, in addition then to offshore funds investing in Vietnam. The first part are closed-end retail funds. The second part are what we call membership funds or member funds, which are more for institutional investors.
So only in 2007 that the government started issuing the law to govern the industry.
That's correct. That's correct.
And since then, have you actually seen any amendments or revisions of the law?
In 2007 there were two decisions. After that, not yet. There is though new regulation in the pipeline, and we hope to see that in the course of this year.
So what's the market size of the fund sector at the moment? How many funds are there on the market, and what's the total market value?
The total market value of fund management companies in Vietnam is $12 billion.
Is that a significant figure to you?
It started with almost zero, so in that sense it's quite a growth. However, if you compare it with surrounding countries in the region, or if you compare it with the potential of the capital markets and the economy of Vietnam, then it's still at early stage, a nascent stage, I would say. So it is still small numbers in that process.
But we have seen a lot of growth in the sector.
We have seen, let's say, quite a lot of growth because the industry started in 2007. Although, in all honesty, the last 2 years we have not seen so much growth.
That's because of the global financial crisis.
Partly the global financial crisis, but also the investment climate in Vietnam.
The investment climate in Vietnam,
Yeah.
Are you saying that it's not very encouraging for investors at the moment?
The last 1.5 years we have seen quite a difficult investment environment, I would say, with the normal, let's say, the macroeconomic factors like the dong devaluation, the high inflation, high interest rates, have in general a negative impact on the investment environment. And that has happened in Vietnam in the last 1.5, almost 2 years.
I know that 2007 you start seeing a lot of funds getting into Vietnam. Do you actually see new funds established in Vietnam for 2009, 2010 and to date?
2011, 2010, not really, I would say. A limited number. Most of the growth of this number of funds and of the size of the funds happened in the first few years. You might recall the years 2005, 2006, 2007, when there was a lot of attraction worldwide into Vietnam for investments. If that kinds of things happen, that has a positive effect on also the number of fund management companies coming into the sector.
So how many funds have we got in Vietnam at the moment, totally?
We have companies 47. 47. Yeah.
So which are the top three in terms of values?
If you look at purely at size of, which is the normal metrics, I would say, although size does not necessarily say something about profitability, but size are VIET Capital, secondly my company, Prudential, and thirdly Dragon Capital.
And Dragon Capital, so
These
VIET
are the
Capital,
first-
Prudential and Dragon Capital.
Yeah. And VIET Capital and Dragon Capital are examples of companies who are offshore funds investing in Vietnam, whereas Prudential is the only one who is partly we are investing or we are managing or advising offshore funds who are invested in Vietnam, but we are also managing investments for the domestic domestic investors
as well.
Yeah, correct.
I recall in 2008, because of the global financial crisis, the fund sector actually goes through some sort of restructuring. And some of the offshore funds actually pull out of Vietnam. For example, the case of Indochina Capital. What's your thought on that?
Yes, that can happen. There was quite, as you might recall, in 2008, the year of the financial crisis, a lot of investors reduced their risk appetite. And they withdraw money from these mutual funds, where they were able to do. It was not possible for all funds, but for a number of funds it was. And then the funds reduce in size and reduce in profitability in that process. So that's a normal pattern which is happening. Yeah.
So how is the performance of the sector at the moment and for the last few years?
It has been quite a difficult and a volatile market, I would say, the last few years. Let's start with what you say, the financial crisis, which was 2008. Globally, including Vietnam, let's say you saw a downward pressure on the prices, certainly in the equity market, very, very clearly, with percentages of over 50% depending upon the sector. In 2009 was quite a good year for investing. Yes, starting from a low level. We saw very interesting investment returns, specifically in the equity sector. A lot of other countries, the investment returns continued to be quite positive. Later on in 2009, 2010, and a bit in 2011. In Vietnam, we experienced already again in 2010 a negative returns, basically.
Is that across the sector, the areas of investment, or is it just in some areas?
That is in most of the areas, and that was even strengthened for year to date, or what we say, let's say the first 5 months of this year, where we saw all the sectors of the investment sector were not good.
Even year to date into 2011?
Even 2011 up till now has been a difficult investment environment. This year up to now has been a disappointing year for investments.
So are you seeing this trend continue on for the rest of the year in 2011, and what about moving forward into 2012?
Well, on the long term, it's a positive story. Vietnam has a strong economy, a growing economy. Yes, you might say that that growth rates are a bit under pressure, but if you're still above 6% economic growth, that's certainly not bad.
But are the investors still very patient to wait for Vietnam to get back on track, or are they losing a bit of patience already?
Investors are a lot of investors are short-term oriented, and certainly there are investors who are losing their patience and who have decided to withdraw from the market. Absolutely is the case.
Okay, but so then of all the areas that you invest in Vietnam, Which are the top areas for foreign investment at the moment? Is it property, is it private equity, or is it the stock market?
For offshore investors, we've seen in the last 5, 6, 7 years a lot of interest in the private equity sphere, as well as in the property sector. Certainly at this moment, they are the biggest ones.
Private equity and property.
Private equity and property. Investors who want to invest in Vietnam, or offshore investors, if you see that the listed equity market is not so big, yeah, then you're looking for alternatives, and then you come quite quickly into the private equity.
But private equity investment is not a very easy area of investment in Vietnam, is it? Because you actually have a very limited pool of good companies that you can invest in, as well as the working mindset of the management in those companies are very different. Have you actually invested in this particular area?
Yes, private equity is not an easy asset category to invest in, but I would not say that that is specific for Vietnam. That's also for other markets.
Other markets as well.
You know that these are not listed companies, so transparency is more difficult. Acquisition is sometimes difficult. The management is not always open or transparent, but I would not say that is specific for Vietnam.
Do you expect to list these companies at the end of your investment period?
Listing is only one of the exit options. That is an option, although that depends very much again on the state of the investment market. But there are other exit options, like selling it in the secondary market, the secondary private equity market, selling it to sponsors, or selling it to a buyer, an industrial buyer who's interested in that part. So it is not just looking at IPOs in that process.
So secondary buyers or other options that you've mentioned, are they achievable in Vietnam?
Yes, they are achievable.
They are achievable in Vietnam. Okay, let's talk about the property market that you've invested in, because property has seen very much big development in 2007, 2008, and then all the way there's been a downturn. Has that particular category still been an interest for the company?
Oh yes, for us, yes, property is basically an instrument or an asset category where you need to invest for the long term, not for making a trading profit. These are investors who understand that you invest in property for the long term.
What's your portfolio of property investment at the moment? Is it more into the hospitality sector, or is it more residential or commercial buildings?
More in the commercial side, although not only. A diversification in your portfolio is quite important in that process, because not all segments of the market were bad since 2007, as you indicate. Let's say residential has been, up till a few months ago, has been very positive.
Okay, so at the moment, property and private equity investment are still the key areas of investment in Vietnam. Do you see this trend going forward into the future?
Okay, I would say these are the most important for the offshore investors. Let's say for onshore investors, they're either the bond markets or the equity market are quite good alternatives as well. If you talk about the other sectors in addition to private equity and property, is for the first place the fixed income market, which is a combination of government bonds, and you know that the government has borrowed, so they need to finance, and government bonds is one important element.
But what happens after the negative rating from Standard & Poor's and Moody's about Vietnam's sovereign debt and all that?
Yes, that has a negative effect, but let's say, let's not exaggerate in that part. It is a negative outlook, but it's still a positive...
profit?
Yeah. No, this is... So it is worse than it was. It is not the top quality, but it's also not so bad. And for investors who understand and who are able to take some risks, if you look from an offshore perspective, it's a good investment. And for domestic investors, it's just the best investment for the moment. Yeah.